Now we move on to the keynote speech about private equity and venture capital market. He is the managing partner of Axxess Capital with over 24 years of experience in private equity investment and management in Southeastern Europe. He had been having management positions and chairman or director of the board in portfolio companies of 3 managed investment funds: Romanian American Enterprise Fund, Balkan Accession Fund, and Emerging Europe Accession Fund, as well as in other private or public companies in Romania. Throughout his career as an investment manager, he personally managed investments in excess of 200 million euros in a variety of sectors with successful ventures in areas as diverse as IT, retail, financial services, energy, and manufacturing. And since 2017, he is the president of the Romanian Private Equity Association, ROPEA, Mr. Horia Manda.
Thank you so much for this introduction. I would like only to make a correction. It's not Express Fund. It was Romanian American Enterprise Fund. Thank you very much. It will be very difficult for me to speak today after this wonderful presentation made by Minister Burduja, which requires a lot of attention, and I'll be inclined to start already commenting some of these announcements and statements he made. However, I think my role is a little bit different today, and I will start by expressing my gratitude to the organizers, Asociația Națională a Antreprenorilor, Confederația Națională pentru Antreprenoriat Feminin, and to my colleagues from Catalyst for their kind invitation to speak on the stage of such a prestigious institution. Congratulations for the idea to organize this first venture capital forum, an event that I wish a long life. We might ask ourselves why this did not happen in the past. Putting aside the difficult pandemic period that seems to be over by now, there is a more fundamental reason for this. In the relatively short history of the private equity and venture capital in Romania and in our region, there was never a period of such fervent venture capital activity as in the last 18 months, when VC investments are booming, making CE, Central Eastern Europe, outpace most of other VC ecosystems in Europe. Thus, I think that is a very good moment for reflection, to look back at the past that brought us here, to try to guess where we are as an industry today, and more importantly, to understand what might happen in the near to medium term. Over the next few minutes, I would like to address some of these topics, and although unable to sing a nice song, hopefully my words shall be equally acceptable to the audience's ears, or at least not very boring. I hope you can realize the difficulty of this task, since we live in a very confusing and unpredictable environment. Every day we hear mostly negative or at least contradictory news about war in Ukraine, about the global economy, COVID pandemics, high inflation, rising energy prices, supply chain disruptions, risk of recession in developed economies, stock market negative corrections, social unrest, global warming, etc., etc. In particular, for Romania, we hear about one of the highest GDP growth in Europe, which is admittedly on the back of high inflation, estimated to over 15% for 2022. Twin deficits. Romania, unfortunately, continues to have the highest trade deficit in Europe, lowest fiscal revenues per GDP, lowest non-governmental lending in GDP, some of the highest energy prices in Europe, labor deficits, etc. And predictions for 2023 are not very positive, although the economy is expected to grow, but at a significantly lower pace. It's very difficult to remain optimistic under the current circumstances. Still, amid all this negative data, one very interesting piece of news came out a few days ago. Over the last 22 years, Romania has recorded the highest GDP growth in constant prices between all European countries of approximately 8 times. What did it mean for the average Romanian citizen? GDP per capita has grown from $1,700 to $15,000, whereas, for comparison purposes, the EU average GDP per capita doubled during the same period to reach $38,000. This is a fantastic achievement, and despite many political and economic turbulences, it shows an incredible progress that needs a moment of celebration, but also a moment of reflection. What were the main drivers behind this success? Although there are many reasons and forces behind the reality, my guess is that the most important engine behind this performance is the invested capital, in particular the foreign direct investment, with all the other benefits attached like access to know-how, technology transfer, innovation, etc. Equally important is to realize that this spectacular performance is not unique for Romania, but it encompasses the whole CE region that has grown much quicker than the rest of Europe in an attempt to converge. The next question that immediately arises, what can we expect from the future? Is the convergent play still going on? Can our industry play a role in forging this future? My answer is yes, it can. And despite the insignificant role in the past, there are many reasons to believe that this shall dramatically improve in the future, and I shall try to prove here. First of all, let me show where we stand on the, excuse me, yeah, here we are. So let me show you some statistics for the Central Eastern European market. Private equity and venture capital in Central Eastern Europe are in a steady growth phase, continue to rebound. That began in 2014, following the global financial crisis and the subsequent Eurozone crisis. However, despite these very positive dynamics, this didn't have matched the global PE market bonanza following the financial crisis, leaving headroom for convergence to international markets. If you look at the fundraising, excuse me, if you look at the fundraising statistics, one can see a similar outlook, however, not really matching the time before the financial crisis. A recent OECD study shows that the total amount of 20 billion euros raised by private equity and venture capital funds in Central Eastern Europe during 2007 and 2019 represents only 2.2% of the total capital raised at the European level. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for showing me where I should look at. Okay. CE investment have been a record high in 2021, with investments representing 0.225% of the region's GDP, with a trend shifting allocation from gross equity towards venture capital. Yet, CE still lags behind the European level, which stood at 0.74% in GDP. Here we have really an interesting map computed by Invest Europe on the investments in Central and Eastern Europe statistics in 2021. And this shows where the region is with an average of 0.228% in GDP. And unfortunately, it also shows that Romania is very much behind this curve. In Romania, the PE activity is at a much lower level than its potential and levels in the neighboring countries in the Central Eastern Europe. This is applicable more or less to all the aspects of the private equity: fundraising, investments, and divestments, as per most statistics published by Invest Europe, the OECD, as well as other analysts. If you look at this map here, compared to the selected peer countries, Romania lags behind over the last 5 years, particularly in fundraising and divestment. In countries such as Czech Republic and Poland, PE fundraising between 2015 and 2019 represented on average 0.22% and 0.10% of their respective GDP, while the corresponding figure for Romania being only at 0.01%. Furthermore, Romania represents only 1% of the Central Eastern European region in terms of fundraising. Yet, Romania's investment activity by private equity funds takes a fairer share in the region of 0.60% by reference to the Romanian GDP and 14% out of a total investments made in Central Eastern Europe as an average for the last 5 years. This shows that Romania is quite attractive for investors, especially for the regional ones, despite the fact that there is little funding raising activity. While the private equity industry in Central Eastern Europe is waiting to match its pre-crisis records, venture capital's current boom in CE is unprecedented. VC overall investment in the region has skyrocketed in recent years, with the 2021 value just over 9 times the level in 2015. That's the fastest growth rate for any region in Europe, and please see this chart attached. This comes from a report issued by Bain for CE, and the value of funds raised by the local GPs grew 5 times in 2016 to 2017 and has continued to scale ever since with strong support from local LPs. And its investments are bearing fruit. The number of current and rising unicorns is steadily increasing. CEE has finally arrived on the map of European venture capital, and the growth is set to continue. The number of CEE companies receiving VC investments in 2021 reached a record of 541 companies, representing 81% of the total number of all CEE private equity finance companies in 2021. The continued strong growth in VC activity in CEE reflects a similar strength in VC fundraising in the region in the last 5 years. Still, CEE represented only 3.2% of the total European venture capital investment value in 2021, while the region accounted for 10% of the European companies receiving VC funds. The average VC increasing over year on year by 58%, but representing just a third of the European average of 3.8 million euros per company. CE is also increasingly becoming a home to venture, technological investment, and innovation. The region's traditionally strong technical education and skills, available human resources in areas such as programming and development, dynamic local environments with limited legacy infrastructure and government support programs that recognize the importance of developing innovative businesses have changed the investment landscape. Experienced general partners are now supporting these businesses and raising even more capital targeted to venture investment. Very encouraging, VC funding in our region, Southeastern Europe, is at an all-time high. Combined VC funding in Southeastern Europe-based startups has already reached over $1.3 billion in 2022. Right. Since 2017, VC funding has grown 5.9 times and shows signs of continued growth. One can look at this, some of these statistics here on this chart. Zooming in and looking at the target investees of VC's players, CE has become one of the fastest growing ecosystems in Europe based on valuation, measured through the increase in value of CE startups. Since 2012, CE startups have grown 50 times, 49.9 times, in fact, in combined enterprise value, significantly faster than its neighbors in Central Eastern Europe, which is 9.1 times, still a remarkable performance, and European average. This study has been recently performed by the Bulgarian Venture Capital Association, together with the DIB, the European Investment Fund, and Deal Room, and this report analyzes the VC ecosystem in our sub-region. Its findings are very interesting, highlighting the outset of a potential very competitive advantage of the region that can be a success story in the long term. If you look at the top 3 industries for VC investments in our region, Southeastern Europe, there were enterprise software, fintech, and transportation, generating a combined level of over $24 billion in enterprise value, constituting over 50% of the total value for the region. Success cases such as UiPath, InfoBeep, Bitdefender, Payhawk, and others have proven the region's capacity to create success cases and unicorns. It is important to mention some of the key factors which accelerated this trend, like the startup intensity, defined as number of startups per capita. You have here another image showing where our region, Southeastern Europe, in terms of this startup density. And this shows that Bulgaria seems to be leading the way in this field, with the other countries following. And Romania is still, I would say, below the average and still far away from the Central Eastern European and European averages. CE accounts for a fraction of Europe's startups in terms of value, but it grew much faster. The existence of 9 unicorns, out of which 3 from Romania, UiPath, EMAG, Bitdefender, and many more Sunicorns. The ecosystem already in place helps spin the wheel by turning local talents into founders, and once a founder has a success story, he or she may become a serial entrepreneur. Now, where is Romania in these statistics? Recent fundraising activity in Romania for the period between 2017 and 2021 shows that out of 154 million euros in new funds raised by private equity and venture capital, 68% are dedicated to VC. This shows a strong interest for such type of investments in Romania. Yet, despite some recent positive trends in VC investing, as highlighted in the previous paragraphs, Romania lags behind in terms of fundraising and investment versus peer countries in the region. What are the root causes for this situation? In my opinion, the main reason is related to the fact that so far, this sector did not benefit from local public funds, as in most of the EU and CE countries. I couldn't put it better than Minister Burduja put it a few minutes ago. Indeed, Romania was not taking the same path as many other countries in our region in setting up this fund of funds until recently. For example, just to make a comparison here, in Bulgaria there is a national fund of approximately 550 million euros, which has supported this development of the local market for the past 6 years, and has triggered a spectacular increase of the number of locally based funds, with 15 new funds being set up after 2016. The result? 111 million euros in funds have been raised in 2021, compared here with Romania, and a staggering 251 million euros in new funds have been raised in 2022 year to date. In addition to the lack of public money dedicated to the private equity and venture capital, there is also the lack of local private capital to support the industry. By geography of the capital, during the period of 2007 and 2019, private equity funds in Romania were financed 69% by European capital, whereas local investors have contributed only with 13%, which is significantly lower compared to the level of 32% in Central Eastern Europe. Moreover, during the same period of time, pension funds have been the largest category of investors in our asset class, raised in the European area, supplying 24% of the funding. In CE, this contribution accounted to 8%, while in Romania, the contribution of the pension funds in the total capital raised for private equity and venture capital is only at 0.26%. So one can have a sense of the huge gap, magnitude existing between our country and not only European developed countries, but also countries in our region. However, the good news is that things are changing. A long-expected public program under component 9 of the PNRR, the 400 million euros allocated to the Romanian Recovery Equity Fund, a fund of funds dedicated to invest in private equity and venture capital funds with the local or regional investment strategies, represents an unique opportunity as well as a catalyst and accelerator for the growth of our market in Romania. This is a great opportunity to develop the market by consolidating existing GPs and setting up new teams managed by the European Investment Fund. The new fund intends to also mobilize private investors' money in order to support the achievement of this program's objectives. In addition, EU has launched InvestEU, you already heard about, allocating for SMEs sustainable infrastructure, research, innovation, digitalization, I think, and social investments, a total amount of 26.2 billion euros. Included in the InvestEU program, there is an equity product totaling 6 billion euros, targeting investment in private equity and venture capital in Europe, with specific focus on areas like life sciences and health, space, defense, industrial technologies. I'm sure that you will hear more about these programs from the EIF representatives in just a few minutes. Last but not least, we believe that one of the key success factors for the growth of the local private equity and venture capital sector is to increase the level of investment performed by pension funds. They are significant sources of long-term domestic capital, and they can and should contribute directly to the growth of the local economy. In fact, the co-investment activity with the local pension fund was one of the funding pillars of the newly set up Recovery Equity Fund, and I hope that the Romanian authorities shall prove their wisdom to continue on this path despite some recent negative regulatory interferences. I believe that the Romanian ecosystem is ready to move to the next level, considering several historical successes, especially coming from companies operating in technology or with a technology touch on the backbone of the Romanian innovation abilities, tradition in technical education, and entrepreneurship initiatives. UiPath's success story being the first company from Central Eastern Europe listed on the New York Stock Exchange in 2021, backed by private equity funds. EMAG, it's a 1 billion euro plus turnover company, one online retailer expanding in the region, majority owned by a private equity fund. Bitdefender, a success story that I had the privilege to support from its birth, from the spin-off to the pre-IPO stage, now backed by another larger private equity fund. These are a few examples of the most successful investments linked with the technology and innovation, companies backed by the private equity venture funds, which have become unicorns and extremely successful in their field. All these examples show the positive impact of private equity venture capital investments typically have on the companies in which they invest. Much faster growth than their peers, faster job creation versus sector averages, improved strategy, design and implementation, and improved management and financial reporting system. Just a few comments on where the Romanian Private Equity Association is in this ecosystem. ROPEA aims to be a catalyst for the development of the sector, facilitate the collaboration among investors, PE funds, managers, entrepreneurs, authorities, in order to support the industry development, and advocates for increasing the contribution of local capital, including making legislation more favorable. And we look forward to working with the government. I took it as a promise made by Minister Burduja a few moments ago, and we will be more than happy to cooperate in this new legislative proposals. Furthermore, we believe that there is a great opportunity for local private equity and venture capital associations in the region in becoming key role players in enhancing regional collaboration between PE and VC players, supporting the development of a regional hub, particularly for the Balkans, in terms of regional cooperation and cross-border investment through co-investments in Romania as well as in other Balkan countries. Smart investors are building regional champions that have the size and scope to make them attractive to global players looking to enter several markets with a single deal. And the European Union and NATO continue to provide very credible guarantees of security and stability and aid to develop infrastructure and fund the transition to a green economy. In the end, returning to my initial statement, I hope that I have provided enough evidence for the statements that there was never such a large amount of capital available in Romania and the region for private equity and venture capital investments, for creating partnerships with entrepreneurs and accelerating growth of companies in different stages of their life cycle. This money can now support investments in the first stages with equity crowdfunding, acceleration equity, pre-seed and seed investments, and later on with growth equity and buyout funding, taking the companies to the next levels and helping them move towards a regional and even global status. Thus, the convergence story is set to continue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Horia Manda, for this elaborate presentation. So, as you've all observed, there is a path, there is a way, there is a lot of room for growth, and we have examples of good practices. We have small startups that are now international, coming from Romania. Some of them became unicorns, so there are a lot of opportunities for the next year and a lot of equity.